He must be made to cover that hole, to refund the monies. He must be asked, because it was his personal decision. When you read the resignation letters of the eminent clergy, they say that he told them that they must demolish all of those properties. The compensation, President Akufo-Addo should pay for it, not our taxes. When people are taking financial haircuts, when hospitals don't have medical equipment, when we can't even supply food to our children in secondary school, we end up giving them rotten, expired food. President Akufo-Addo must be held directly responsible. This was his brainchild. He masterminded this whole create, loot, and share scheme. And he must take ultimate responsibility, and he must be made to clean up this mess and to pay for all of what he has caused the Ghanaian people and this respected clergymen who sadly have been subjected to this ordeal which they don't deserve. At least most of them don't deserve, apart from that double identity man. So we'll now take your questions. Thank you very much. Recover all the loot and make sure that people are held accountable. How can you trust any prosecution under this Attorney General who was on the board, who, when he saw that the ship was sinking, beat a fast retreat and jumped out? Long after the fact, when they had engaged in all of these illegalities. So I conclude by saying that the people of Ghana should repose their confidence in His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. We have promised a full-scale forensic audit into this, as CHRAJ is demanding. And we have said we will pursue all those who are keeping our monies under this National Cathedral project. People like Carrie Summers keeping our $6 million. David Ajay, who engaged in the worst inflationary pricing you can find anywhere in the world, where after all the millions of dollars he had been paid, just to review his design, to add a restaurant to the design, he charged us another $5.7 million just to add a restaurant to the design. All of these people must be made to refund. And that is why, for genuine, credible, impartial, and thorough accountability, we ought to vote for the NDC and John Dramani Mahama. But ultimately, this is not just about partisan politics. You know me, all the causes I have pursued is about protecting the public purse. My only regret is that I thought that President Akufo-Addo would have really been a worthy partner, because he pledged that he will protect the public purse. Unfortunately, we now have to protect the public purse from the person who promised to protect the public purse. He has battered the public purse, and he has totally damaged and ransacked the public purse. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I have gone into great detail, but it is to put all of this in proper perspective, so that you know that this is not about me, it's not about personal vendetta, it's not about an attack on any religion. The plight of the eminent priests, as I have said, is really unfortunately regrettable. I feel very, very sad for them. But they were deceived, totally misled by President Akufo-Addo, and he ought to take the blame. And let me conclude by saying that President Akufo-Addo must be surcharged. President Akufo-Addo must be held directly responsible for this gross financial loss. This whole matter is about the deception of President Akufo-Addo, how he misled this country, misled clergymen, how he sacrilegiously and blasphemously deceived God and has created this grand mess that we find ourselves in. Now, with this contract having been declared illegal, how do we retrieve our monies? And immediately, we ought to be thinking about how all of those who have engaged in this criminal enterprise will refund our monies to us. This is why the good people of Ghana, if you want real and genuine accountability, if you want Operation Recover All Loot, because clearly the CHRAJ report vindicates why there is a need for an operation to recover all loot. And you find that only in the NDC manifesto. Only His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has made that pledge at board meetings. And yet, despite the lack of documents, the lack of evidence, CHRAJ says that they want to go with Victor Sibwati Nkobdo-Edujemfi, that it was a loan that he gave to the National Cathedral of Ghana, and National Cathedral of Ghana was paying back, despite the lack of documents. And the only recommendation they have is that they should go for a course. They say, so Institute of Directors should come and take them through how to keep minutes, keep records. Very, very, very curious decision. But that is the decision of CHRAJ. I have asked my lawyers to study this CHRAJ report and advise me on the next steps, on what we should do. Finally, before we take your questions, ladies and gentlemen, I want to re-establish the context. This whole National Cathedral conundrum, it has always been about protecting the public purse. It has always been about parliamentary oversight, making sure that our laws are followed and respected. Those who are claiming that this is some crusade by a Sanballat and Tobias, by a false prophet or antichrist and all those names, if they had listened to us many, many months ago, the crisis we face today, where an eminent board of trustees face criminal prosecution because of corruption and illegalities, would have been avoided. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not about personal vendetta. It is not an attack on Christianity. We remain disciples of Jesus the Christ. We believe that religion has a place in the progress of any nation. But even within our religions, whether Christian, whether Islam, we are told to speak up when we see wrongdoing. We are told to expose wrongdoing. And we are told not to condone or be part of wrongdoing. Cathedral scandal. Then I discovered a strange payment to a company called JNS Talent Center Limited under the heading Contractors Mobilization. As a diligent member of parliament, I know that the contractor is Rebade, not JNS. So So I started asking questions, as you expect of MPs. That's why you pay us with your taxes. You don't send us to parliament to just go and drink tea and be shouting, yeah, 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 everything that comes, yeah, yeah. So when I saw from the documents they brought to parliament that they have paid an amount of money, 2.6 million, describing it as contractors' mobilization to a company that is not a contractor on this project, I started asking questions. Then I discovered that a director of JNS is Okudjeto Ablakwa. I said, who is this? What's so special about this company that they are not contractors and yet they are receiving contractors' mobilization? So I dig further. And then I discover that, oh, can of worms. Okudjeto Ablakwa apparently is the second identity of Victor Kusibwati. That is how this whole matter arose. So for those who are all over the place saying that this is some personal crusade, it's most preposterous, most unfair to me, and must be treated with utter contempt. They don't know what they are talking about. Now let me deal with the issue of the conflict of interest, which CHRAJ is saying that could not be sustained. The evidence that I saw is payment from National Cathedral to JNS, 2.6 million. Secretary to the company is there, the National Cathedral board, and the payment is made to JNS, where he is director, where he is Okudjeto Ablakwa. CHRAJ is saying that they want to go with Victor Kusibwati and Okudjeto Ablakwa story that the National Cathedral of Ghana was paying back a short-term interest-free loan which they received from Victor Kusibwati or Okudjeto Ablakwa, however you want to call him. Now, interestingly, CHRAJ itself in this report, when you read the report, says that they didn't find documentation to support the transaction. And they actually condemned the two corporate entities, the National Cathedral of Ghana and JNS Talent Center Limited, for their frightening lack of adherence to corporate governance practices. And even recommended that they all have to go for a course on how to keep minutes, how to keep records. In the face of such overwhelming evidence, the averment made by the applicant in his supplementary affidavit to the effect that he has been informed by his lawyer and verily believes him to be true, that per the laws of Ghana, the fact that a person can be identified by two different sets of names is not a crime, and such a person will not be denied the protection of his fundamental human rights enshrined in the 1992 Constitution, by virtue of the fact that he is identified by two different sets of names, is, in the view of the court, completely misconceived. 88. This is because the evidence placed before this court does not disclose a simple case of an individual who is identified by two different sets of names, but rather it discloses a case of an individual who deliberately uses two different identities in his public dealings, either to conceal his true identity, to exploit a loophole in the law, or for whatever reason best known to him, such that, but for the revelations made by the first respondent, that is me, it will be difficult for any public institution or person dealing with the applicant to relate to the identity, to relate one identity with the other. Paragraph 89. The evidence before this court discloses a pattern of duplicity and lack of transparency on the part of the applicant, which borders on criminality, and the failure of applicant's counsel to appreciate the import of his client's conduct and to advise him appropriately is unfortunate, to say the least. Unquote. How come CHRAJ avoided all of this? And we did attach this judgment in our petition. So I get the impression that clearly CHRAJ was on a mission to whitewash Victor Kusibwati. on the matter of his double identity and conflict of interest. But as we Vandals always say, truth stands. No matter how hard you suppress the truth, no matter which institution is involved, the truth shall always stand. Kindly take note that as for me, I've never met Victor Kusi-Boateng or Kwabena Edu-Gyamfi. I don't know which of his names really is him or describes him. Because it's so bizarre. I've never seen anything like this in all my 12 years carrying out parliamentary oversight. But let me state for the record that those who are misleading the public that perhaps there is some personal score to settle, that is totally false, obnoxious, and totally unfounded. Never met him, I don't know him. I started looking into the national in his other name, Kwabena Edu-Gyamfi, attached to my complaint. Now, this is even more explosive. Why did CHRAJ also fail to access the Electoral Commission's database? In my petition, I attached 2 voter ID cards. In 2016, Victor Kusi-Boateng was issued a voter ID card by the Electoral Commission with voter ID number 486-301-6954. The age on that voter ID is 40. In 2016, he said he was 40 years. Then in 2020, the Electoral Commission issued another voter ID card to him in the name Kwabena Edu-Gyamfi with voter ID number 89070184142. I have all the evidence which are attached to my petition. Curiously, in 2020, when he obtained the Kwabena Edu-Gyamfi voter ID card, he said he had become 50 years. So within a 4-year time frame, Victor Kusi-Boateng grew by 10 years. 2016, he was 40 years, voter ID card. 2020 voter ID card, he said he's 50 years. In 4 years, he grew by 10 years. CHRAJ is saying that they didn't find it necessary to look into all of these databases. Most shocking. What was CHRAJ concealing? What were they hiding? Then, as I've said earlier, CHRAJ also failed to take into consideration the judgment of a high court on the 13th of July 2023, where the judge said emphatically that the conduct of Victor Kusi-Boateng borders on criminality. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, let me read that portion of the judgment. And the judge in that case is Her Ladyship Barbara Tete Chawe, a justice of the High Court. Advice. Now, the logical question that arises, which I want to pose to CHRAJ this morning on the Kusi-Boateng matter, is that why did they rely on only the passport database when the evidence I attached in my petition, presented by my lawyers, had evidence from the GRA database? I will make copies available to you. The GRA responded to an RTI request I filed. And the GRA, in their response, duly signed by Mrs. Florence Asante, Assistant Commissioner in charge of Communication and Public Affairs, dated 3rd February 2023, the GRA confirmed that in their database, Victor Kusi-Boateng has a double identity. When he is operating as Victor Kusi-Boateng, his date of birth is 7 September 1971. His mother's maiden name is Agnes Atta, and his TIN is P000-250-2682. When he is operating as Akufo-Addo Jemfi in the GRA database, his TIN, and you know our laws, you cannot have two TINs. You cannot have two tax identification numbers. And yet, miraculously, he managed to beat the GRA system and have quoted the documents, the official who signed, the assistant commissioner who signed this document. When he is operating as Akufo-Addo Jemfi, the TIN is P006-27241X. In the GRA database, my question to CHRAJ is that, why did they ignore this evidence that I put before them and relied only on the passport database? And they say that they found only one set of passports. And even that, the name in the passport doesn't tally with the Victor Kusi-Boateng name and date of birth used for his appointment and used to incorporate the National Cathedral of Ghana. So how can this be a vindication? The other question I have for CHRAJ is that, why did CHRAJ fail to access the DVLA database? Because I also attached Victor Kusi-Boateng's driving license, which is in the name Victor Kusi-Boateng. Why did CHRAJ fail to access the database? In the CHRAJ report, they say they only accessed the passport database. Why did they leave out the GRA database? Why did they leave out the DVLA database? Why did CHRAJ also leave out the National Identification Authority database, which also confirms that he has a Ghana card? You decide to issue a diplomatic passport to the person to carry out his official duties, travel abroad, to receive diplomatic courtesies, to raise funds for the National Cathedral project. And then you issue that passport in a different name, Akufo-Addo Jemfi, not Victor Kusi-Boateng, Akufo-Addo Jemfi, with a different date of birth. I'll show you the evidence. When you read the documents which I provided to CHRAJ, I had copies of the passport. The diplomatic passport, the date of birth there is 30th December 1969. The diplomatic passport number is DX005845, provided here. Expires 24th November 2026. Issued 25th November 2021. How come, ladies and gentlemen, how come CHRAJ did not find this curious? Did not see the clear criminality here? How can you be appointed as Reverend Victor Kusi-Boateng with the date of birth 7 September 1971, and then you are issued diplomatic passport to work in your official capacity, and the diplomatic passport comes in a different name, Akufo-Addo Jemfi, and the date of birth is different, 30th December 1969. And yet, NPP propagandists say that this is a vindication. Reverend Victor Kusi-Boateng has been cleared. Cleared of what? When this is actually a confirmation of everything I've been putting out. Until my exposés, who knew in this country that this man was carrying a double identity? Who knew that he was holding himself as Akufo-Addo Jemfi and having other official documents as Akufo-Addo Jemfi? Who knew? So how can this be a vindication? And all over, this morning I'm hearing NPP propagandists say that Samuel Okudjeto Ablakwa should be sued by Reverend Victor Kusi-Boateng. Well, for their information, Reverend Victor Kusi-Boateng already sued me, and he lost. I'll provide to you the judgment of the Human Rights Court, a high court of Ghana, on the 13th of July 2023, where the court held that he had no business suing me and that the conduct he had engaged in borders on criminality. I'm quoting the judge verbatim. These are not my words. That his counsel ought to have advised him not to even come to court, because what he has engaged in is egregious, is grave. So those who are trying to offer this advice to Kusi Boateng are very late in the day. And it's a wet